Lords and ladies, we now offer some Bellydance from Lady Ann Nichols of GeekGirlWisdom Philly Bellydance.
With every breath
Lords and ladies, I know many of you have visited our fair autumn festival, but for those of you who might not, we wish to peel back the curtain and provide you a look inside the fair and show you just who we are doing what we do. To that end, we present this look at some of our volunteers, who are all volunteers of a group known as the Roundtable, who have been doing this for many years. You only need to have a love of the time period and a desire to share that love with others, to join the Roundtable and assist in putting on the fair and keeping it alive from year to year. So join us now as we meet some of our volunteers and what the Renaissance Faire means to me.
The Renaissance Faire means the world to me. It's heaven on earth. It is family. It is friends. It's community. It is opportunity. It is funnel cakes and lemonade. It is fantasy and reality. It is fun in the hot, cold, or rain. It is insane and a foot parade. It is smoke and music and dance and memories. It is posters, coins, beads, reeds, good reeds, hats, scarves and hats. It's rats, cats and dogs, umbrellas and art, chess and turkey legs. It's an arrow shoot and a scavenger hunt. A fun, friendly feast of friends at the fountain on the green. And it's family friendly and free, as heaven on earth should be. By Joy Willow, Roundtable volunteer and a member of the Shoals Writers Guild.
Lords and ladies, many of you are fans of the great bard Shakespeare, and Firenze is no exception. Many of us enjoy his wondrous poems and plays as well, and now we present John Givens, or aka John Sterling, reciting Shakespeare.
If we shadows have offended, think but this and all is mended, that you have but slumbered here, while these visions did appear, and in this weak and idle theme, no more yielding than a dream. Gentles, do not reprehend. If you pardon, we will mend. And as I am an honest puck, and if we have unearned luck, not escape the serpent's tongue, and we will make amends ere long, or else this puck a liar call. So good night unto you all. Give us your hands if we be friends, and Robin shall restore amends.
Lords and ladies, it is now time for something completely different. We bring to you a medieval moment.
A medieval moment. Executioners. Forget the image of a fat man with no shirt, wearing a black hood and wielding a wicked double-bladed axe. Real medieval executioners were depicted in ordinary everyday garb, often wearing hats and butcher's aprons, and wielding two-handed swords. In medieval Europe, the prevalent idea was that justice should be seen to be done, which is where the executioner, with his ritualized and regulated violence on the crown's behalf, whether an actual execution or merely a flogging, etc., came in. Regarding public executions in the Middle Ages, historian Joel F. Harrington writes, quote, "In the medieval era, public executions were meant to accomplish two goals. First, to shock spectators, and second, to reaffirm divine and temporal authority. A steady and reliable executioner played the pivotal role in achieving the delicate balance through his ritualized and regulated violence on the state's behalf. The court condemnation, the death procession, and the execution itself constituted three acts in a carefully choreographed morality play." Unquote. Medieval Europeans desired an orderly and stable society, and public executions were designed to serve as a deterrent to possible malefactors and to reaffirm the authority of God, His Holy Church, and the Crown. As author Andrew McCall says, the idea was that justice should be seen to be done, an idea relished as much by the populace, who often urged the executioners to their work, as by the authorities, who wanted to send a message to would-be criminals. In her work on medieval executioners, Professor Hanela Clementia writes, quote, "From the beginning, the position of executioner was understood as only being appropriate for laymen. The Church forbade those of the priestly class from performing any duties that were connected with the shedding of blood." Unquote. According to 13th century St. Thomas Aquinas in his Summa Theologica, priests were forbidden from all killing because Christ taught that violence should not be met with violence, and that they were to love their neighbors as themselves. Thus, while ecclesiastical courts might conduct trials, sentence was always carried out by the state, and while priests couldn't be executioners, executioners were required to be Christians. It was also the ideal that executioners might also carry some responsibility for the salvation of criminals. If a criminal died with his sins unconfessed, he or she would be damned. Thus, a medieval execution was essentially a drama of religious redemption. And in order to postpone their execution, some criminals would confess additional crimes even during an execution ceremony, in the hope that the sentence of death would be deferred pending further investigation. In addition to clergy and non-Christians, the position of executioner was generally considered unsuitable for women. However, for a brief period in the 13th century, women were occasionally used for executioner's duties, as in an edict of Ludwig IX, which stipulated that 10 to 14-year-olds convicted of perjury or blasphemy were to be publicly flogged naked. Women were to be lashed by women with no men present, unless the appropriate monetary fine was paid. In medieval Europe, it was considered inappropriate, even unnatural, that women should bear arms or take part in violent activities. Such was men's work. The authorities often had difficulties in finding people willing to work as full-time executioners, as, though the job was a necessary one, there was nevertheless a stigma attached to it. Thus, an early practice was established whereby the job could be offered to a condemned criminal who received a pardon if he accepted the position on a permanent basis. Occasionally, butchers would be pressed to serve as executioners. And while no decent person would voluntarily accept the office of executioner, it was difficult for people to accept the convicted criminal as a champion of justice. The story of condemned criminal turned executioner Jehan Lecuyer of Dijon is a case in point. Lecuyer was pardoned in April of 1414 by the Duchess of Burgundy and offered the job of executioner, in exchange for not having his ears clipped off and Lecuyer banished. However, the townsfolk of Dijon eventually came to regret this decision, in 1426 passing a new sentence of banishment on Lecuyer for being, quote, a seditious, quarrelsome, noisy, blaspheming libertine, and such a poorly behaved man that his neighbors cannot live with him in peace, unquote. Executioners typically lived apart from polite society and married within their ranks, and there were actually dynasties of executioners across medieval Europe. Though not officially a hereditary occupation, the job was often passed from fathers to sons. Noted 16th century German executioner Franz Schmidt's father Heinrich, originally a woodsman, was randomly selected out of a crowd by Margrave Albrecht II to hang 3 condemned men, thus was forced into the unwanted occupation of executioner. Franz himself eventually managed to free his own sons from having to continue in the executioner's trade by receiving an imperial privilege from Ferdinand II, thus making him an honorable member of society. Many executioners had a working knowledge of anatomy and medicine, with some executioners practicing medicine on the side. 16th century German executioner Franz Schmidt stated that had he not been forced into being an executioner, he would have become a physician. And after his retirement in 1617, Schmidt became a medical consultant. The profession of executioner also had a surprising literacy rate. Franz Schmidt actually left a diary in which he chronicled 351 executions over a 45-year career. Even by the late Middle Ages, an executioner could not expect decent wages, as official executioners were paid on commission for each execution they carried out, rather than on salary. At the same time, an executioner would bill for the necessary materials and equipment, a sword, knives, branding irons, tongs, ropes, a chopping block, wood for a pyre, etc. Storage and maintenance of these items was also his responsibility, as no decent townsman wanted anything to do with them. Yet public executions were expensive, and authorities in areas without a public executioner had to pay not only his travel expenses, but for his room and board as well. Because executioners were not able to live only on commissions received from punishments, they were commonly granted small preferences to ease their situations, such as being exempt from taxes and duties in many places. French executioners also had the right of havage. According to havage, an executioner had a right to a certain portion of foodstuffs and other products brought into the city for sale, and in Paris in the 14th and 15th centuries included the right to levy tariffs on certain out-of-town merchants and lepers. He was also allowed to keep the clothes of those he had executed, though the deceased belted money up to a certain amount went to the warden. In 1530, the executioner's right of havage was codified in France, so that the practice was normalized across France and was not repealed until 1775. Medieval documents show that in 14th century Avignon, the executioner received 2 sous and 6 deniers for a public whipping. For a public flogging and the cutting off of an ear, the executioner received 7 sous, 6 deniers. Nor did executioners' wages increase as the period progressed. The ledgers of the Rouen Criminal Court show that in August of 1411, executioner Geoffrey Thurage received only 20 sous for dragging a convicted peasant through the streets on a hurdle, a wooden sled, as well as hanging a convict named Colin Clemence. 20 to 30 livres, the corresponding price of a horse, as well as the yearly salary for a 15th century French craftsman, gives a baseline for the size of executioners' fees. 1 livre was worth 20 sous or 240 deniers. A loaf of wheat bread cost 1/2 to 2 deniers. In Kaufbeuer in Germany, the executioner was paid 4 florins for a beheading, 4 florins for a burning at the stake, 4 florins for a hanging, 1 florin for transporting a convict to the execution site on a hurdle, 1 florin for crushing with pincers, 1 florin for cutting off the nose and ears, 1 florin for pillorying, 3 florins for whipping, 2 florins for burying criminals, 6 florins for fetching suicides from the scene of the act, and 0.45 florins for torturing or presenting the instruments of torture. Torture was used. However, more often an executioner would attempt to coax the suspect into a confession merely by presenting the instruments. In other words, showing the suspect the nasty implements about to be used on him if he didn't confess. When a beheading was authorized for a nobleman, the weapon of choice was not the large double-bladed axe we've all seen wielded in the movies and at Ren fairs, but a two-handed sword. Swords were preferred because they made a quicker, cleaner cut. Finding a swordsman skilled enough to do the job was no easy task, however. The citizens of the French town of Lille were stunned when, after condemned rapist Baudouin Mallet refused to kneel to receive the sword stroke that would sever his head, the executioner quickly beheaded the man while standing from the front and with only 1 sword stroke. The reputation of French executioners may be the reason English King Henry VIII sent for a French executioner from Calais who executed Anne Boleyn with a sword in 1536. By the 1540s, swords specifically designed for executions were being made, many of which still exist today in museums and private collections. In medieval Europe, a person could be executed for various offenses, whether crimes against people, property, or religious beliefs. According to historian Mitchell B. Murbach, quote, "Throughout most of Europe and across the better part of a millennium, hanging was the punishment of thieves, breaking with the will was inflicted on murderers, rapists, and those who committed aggravated theft. Arsonists, like heretics, witches, and sodomites, were burned. Women charged with offenses against religion or morality, such as adultery or infanticide, were drowned, and decapitation was used for a wide range of offenses, including manslaughter, robbery, incest, infanticide, or major fraud," unquote. The most gruesome executions, such as drawing and quartering, were reserved for serious criminals, such as traitors and assassins. The right to exercise capital punishment was viewed as a fundamental right of authority, exercised not only by kings and nobles, but also by towns. As the medieval legal system developed, the demand for the death penalty became greater and more widespread, with some sources suggesting that 80% of all executions in late medieval England were for non-violent offenses, though other evidence suggests that by the 15th century the number of death sentences for non-violent offenses dropped markedly. Over-enthusiastic use of the death penalty resulted in reform and greater centralization. In England, by 1278, only theft of property worth more than 12 pence could warrant the death penalty. In general, women were less likely to receive the death penalty for certain offenses and more likely to be pardoned. Rape was made a capital offense in 1285, however, convictions were hard to obtain. This has been a Medieval Moment with Lee Freeman. For more information on a variety of medieval topics, check out Medieval Speak, a medieval word book by Lee Freeman.
Lords and ladies, we now present to you a most curious instrument. It's known as the glass harmonica, and it is beautifully played by one who has been at our festival for many years. Though he has been unable to attend in recent fairs, we know that you are still going to enjoy this nonetheless. We present Lord Don Hinely with the glass harmonica. Lords and ladies, have you ever wondered just what it's like to be a royal? So few of us have the opportunity to sit upon the big chair. But now we can at least peel back the curtain and give you a look into the other side and how the other half live. Join us as we travel back in time to the 2018 festival, where King Paulus and his lovely queen share with us the insights of being king and queen of the Alabama Renaissance Faire.
With the current monarch. We're here at the Alabama Renaissance Faire with the current monarch. So I'd like for him to introduce His Majesty.
My name is Paulus McClure, Scottish, and I think I've always really enjoyed this fair. It's always a good amount of vendors. Everybody seems happy to have something a little different and unusual to do. It's very educational, and I absolutely love that aspect of it as well. To be able to come here, have some fun, and learn something as well.
What has been something that has stood out to you about your reign? Something that you've particularly enjoyed or been surprised by?
I just, it's just nice to be the guy in charge. It just kind of is.
All right, and now we're going to turn to Her Majesty.
Hello, I'm Queen Maggie, Isabella Magali Beatriz Caror McLaren. I'm Spanish by origin. I think my favorite thing about this year has been probably the feast, which not a lot of people get to enjoy. It is the weekend before the fair, and if you ever get an opportunity to attend the feast, you absolutely should, because it is a whole new aspect of the fair that we all enjoy, so it's worth experiencing at least once. I've been doing this since I was 15 years old, performing for the past 10 years, and that's kind of the same level of dedication you get from everyone here. It's always blood and tears and pure joy for everyone involved. So if you've never been, you should attend at least once in your life. So.
Thank you, Your Majesties, and I hope you enjoy the last hour of your reign. And we are preparing for the new coronation of the new King and Queen who will be coming forth. As Her Majesty stated, the Alabama Renaissance Feast is held on the third Saturday night of October, and it is at the feast where we choose the new monarchs for the new king for the new year. Tickets are limited to 200, and they are $25 each. Tickets are sold to the public beginning on October 1st of each year. So if you would like to become the king or the queen of the Alabama Renaissance Faire, plan to buy your ticket for the Alabama Renaissance Feast next October. Come and stand in line and get your chance to find the coin of the realm. Alabama Renaissance Faire. You can see that the king and queen are holding court. One of the things that happens is that children may go up and greet the queen and choose a prize from the treasure chest. And this is Duchess Lizzie Leet, who is demonstrating. She's the royal footstool. She's demonstrating that choosing a prize from the treasure chest is perfectly fine, desirable even. We have lots of children's activities here at the Alabama Renaissance Faire.
Lords and ladies, the Alabama Renaissance Faire has started from a handful of vendors and just a scant few entertainers to what we know and love today. At this time, we wish to present to you a look back at fairs past, so that you can see just how the fair has changed through these many years, and to what we have come to know and love.
To the 2020 Alabama Renaissance Fair, the one it went viral on,